name is Barsanti, CEO and founder of StorageLife. What is StorageLife? We're a community of investors across the country finding, funding, and operating storage together. We also teach you how to do it. If you want to know more, go to storagelife.com. Cool, let's dive in. Today, we're talking about how to actually close more deals by winning the deal. We're in sales. We're convincing the seller or the broker to sell the deal to us. That's what we do every day, all week. If you have any comments or questions, drop them in the comments. Cool. So, all the operators, all the best operators I know, my team, what we do, we build rapport all the time, right? That's the name of the game. We're following up, we're building rapport, but really what we're doing is we're going the extra mile, and it's that simple. We're doing what most people aren't doing. Imagine somebody getting started, not knowing how to play the game. They talk to a seller, they take for granted that seller's having great conversations with them, maybe assume that seller's not talking to anybody else, whatever it may be, but they don't understand that that seller that's talking to you, that relationship is important. You gotta take that seller's time and opportunity very seriously, and the seller has to know that. So let's talk about different ways we are going to win over the deal. So when we're talking to a seller or a broker, we are presenting ourselves as the best, most qualified buyer that knows the most about the deal, that spent the most amount of time on the deal. We're painting a picture so that when they're talking to other people, again, whether it's a broker or a seller, they're starting to get a clear picture. Let's say they haven't met us yet. Man, this person is being very respectful of my time. They're listening, they're asking the right questions. They're really putting in a lot of effort to this. And as we build this relationship with people, a lot of times we don't know, right? And so how do we do that? Well, we do it a lot. Again, we don't take these sellers or brokers' time for granted. We are respectful. We help them understand where we're coming from. That's a big tip, right? We're helping them understand, hey, we like this deal. This is why we're interested. This is why we're presenting to you X offer, right? Got to do it as quick as you can. And when you make that offer, you have to tell them why you're making the offer. I know that sounds silly, but hey, we're coming in here. This is why. This is what we ran into, the problems. Here's what we like about the deal. Here's why we're interested. Once you have time to look it over, let's chat. The most obvious tip I can give you is the people who meet the most sellers usually get the most deals. Does that mean you got to jump in a plane and fly out immediately to meet a seller? No, but it helps. And once you have a deal that you're excited about, you've already talked numbers, you've talked to the seller, you're about to go under contract, or obviously if you're under contract, but you got to get out there right away. There's times where, our community is now spread across the country, so we can potentially leverage each other. Hey, I see you're an hour away from a deal I have about to go under contract. Can you go meet the seller for me? But otherwise, it's my partner or other partners or people that you know, or you have to take a 4-hour drive or maybe a small flight. But again, nothing happens more importantly than when you actually meet somebody in person. That's a seller and a broker. When you start going to these events, these conferences, walk-in properties, all this, these relationships you're building in person matters most. Okay, let's drill into some more specific stuff. So again, getting in front of a person, if you can't, jump on a Zoom call with the seller. We do it all the time. Walking them through screen sharing our underwriting so they understand exactly where our numbers are, what our predicament is if we can't get to their price, right? Again, we're educating the seller and helping them understand where we're coming from. Essentially, what we're doing is telling that seller where we can go, and that seller's telling us where they can go. And somehow, if we can take terms and purchase and work it to the point where the deal works out for both of us, we win the deal. Most people aren't actually trying to figure out this jigsaw puzzle. It's a puzzle. It's literally a puzzle where there's two sides both needing something to make the deal work. And so we're coming in, again, with respect, with time, educating the seller. And then hopefully, if the seller is willing to do seller finance terms, we then play with interest-only payments, amortization, all these different little levers we can pull to where all of a sudden the seller is getting that price they want and we're getting a terms we want where it pencils out for us and it makes the seller happy, right? That's the sweet spot. This can take months. This can take a year. It can take a lot of time, and it usually does, and it's not easy. But once you start going down the road of building these really meaningful relationships, having these conversations, you're gonna stand out above anybody else quickly. You're gonna be the one that's taking the time and effort to actually talk to the seller. You're solving their problem, right? That's your goal. You're talking to a seller, and in order to solve their problem, you have to understand their problem. Ask them what they want, right? We've talked about it before. Ask them what they want. Understand where they're coming from. problem. And a lot of times those sellers, they don't know what they want. Actually, it's a lot of times they don't know. They're ready to go. They're ready to sell, concerned about capital gains. A lot of times they actually don't know. So you're there to support them and help them understand that journey. We actually are talking to a seller we've been talking to for almost a year now, where it got to a point where the tax thing was tricky. So we've actually introduced him to our tax guy, and they're talking, trying to figure it out. And every couple months, the guy checks back in. He's like, hey, I think we're finally getting somewhere. Your tax guy is so helpful, da 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 da. That's what's going to make this deal happen, because we've introduced them. So again, going above and beyond, going the extra mile. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples, okay? Jason, one of our StorageLife members, he was talking to a broker about a deal that was on market, and the deal was okay, but through digging found that the guy owned other property. And so he asked the broker, hey, does the seller own anything else? Long story short, finds out the seller owns another storage facility, but he doesn't want to sell it. Through months of negotiation, Jason was actually not only able to get the seller to sell the other property too, that now supported this first property because it was a little more distressed, and then also was able to close on an SBA loan. So it was quite a process. But Jason was upfront about it. He asked the right questions, and finding out that there was another deal this seller wasn't even going to sell, and so he got the deal, right? Daniel Reed, he took a letter of mine that I send, that we worked really hard on getting a lot of results from the technique we're using, and copied the letter, made it his own, sent it to a guy, owns 80,000 square feet, beautiful facility, and the guy's like, hey man, I get letters all the time, but yours really stood out, and so I'm calling you. Again, he just went the extra mile. He took time to really do a nice letter, a copy of some tricks I showed him, and so it got the guy's attention, going extra mile on a letter, right? Joe just put another property under contract, 60,000 square feet. It was on the market for 2 weeks. He called the broker every day for 2.5 weeks, actually, and it took that long for the broker to get back to him. 2.5 weeks, and she had just put it on the market. So you think she's excited to list this property, and it's on the market, and it's a great place in Colorado, and then all of a sudden it takes him 2.5 weeks to get a hold of her. Is he the only one having that hard time? No, everybody is. But guess what? Joe's relentless. I'm sure you've heard me talk about Joe before. He's got 2 deals under contract right now. He just closed 2, but he was relentless and finally got to her first or second, got all the information that he needed, and he's gonna close that deal because he was relentless. If you're having trouble getting a hold of people, guess what? So is everybody else. And so at that point, it's the game of who can get a hold of this seller or broker first. Brokers that are not great, that are struggling, that are maybe not self-storage brokers, they can be frustrating to work with, but that's great, because that means if they're frustrating and difficult to work with, that is the case for everybody. And so it's just a matter of us going the extra mile, right? Dan Irwin, he kept in touch with a broker for 8 months. It was on the market, a giant portfolio with Marcus and Millichap. It was like selling for $18 million, but there was one facility he wanted in New Mexico. So Dan took it amongst himself to talk to that broker and be like, hey, I'm only interested in this deal. The broker came back to him, I think a couple months later, and said, guess what? We actually think we're going to be able to break up this portfolio. And so this property you were interested in, we may be able to sell. Months went by, months and months. Dan kept in touch. All of a sudden, finally, hey, we're going to go forward with this deal, but sellers still have to figure out a few things. Always feeling like, dude, this never is going to happen. This is too many things have to line up. This isn't going to happen. Even me, I was like, 9 months later, let's go under contract. Brokers like they want to sell. Then they go under contract. Well, we still haven't gotten permission from the bank to break it up again. And finally now, I think they're closing in a week or 2. He went above and beyond. He went the extra mile. Jordan's been in touch with this seller for a year, that now they finally circled back, and it looks like they're negotiating. We do this all the time. You've heard me say it a lot about these sellers we're talking to eventually they're like, you know what? I'm not going to sell to anybody else. I like you. You were the only one that showed up and met me, whatever it is. Brad Bahari found a deal on market and then just wasn't afraid to go way below what they were asking. That's what got the deal done. Listed by a non-storage broker. Sean and Megan's VA found a property that was about to go on the market. They're like, you need to talk to the broker. So they did. Talk to the broker. Was very transparent. I'm on a 1031, but we live nearby. Took a couple of weeks to really figure things out. Broker's like, you know what? I'm not going to list this. You guys are awesome. You really want it. Again, just going the extra mile. We take them to lunch. We take them to breakfast. You've heard me say it. I've drove in a snowstorm hours to meet a seller one morning. He's like, dude, I've been talking to 2 sellers. A buyer's chomping at the bid for this deal and you're the only one that met me, and you met me 24 hours after we spoke, going the extra mile. There's not a whole lot of secrets out there, guys. You just have to be willing to be patient and consistent and put in that time. Once you get good and understand that when you're building rapport, you're just trying to stand out with sincerity and paying attention, doing all the right things, listening, asking the right questions, making the seller feel good about you, and things will start shifting drastically. It takes time, but think about when you're doing this in 10 different directions over the course of a year, and then 2 years and 3 years, and next thing you know, you've had 50 good conversations with sellers, and you've been willing to put in that time and effort, and you're consistent about it. You're going to start standing out, these guys, and people are going to take you seriously, both with a broker and a seller. Buttoning this thing up really quick, painting a picture that you're the right person to buy the facility, and also helping that broker or seller understand where you're coming from, why you're stuck at your number, how you've been able to come in with creative ideas, how to structure the deal to make it work for all parties. All this extra effort is appreciated, it's understood, it helps both a broker and a seller, and that's how you stand out. Hope this helps, guys. Thanks for joining. Good luck out there. Happy hunting. Peace.